Good evening from the nation's capital. I'm David Aiken. Thank you so much for watching. As I mentioned, it is checkup time for Battleground Canada. 4 hotly contested by-elections, a Senate scandal that's not getting any better for the government, and an opposition leader winning praise as Perry Mason. But none of it seems to be moving the political dial very much. A new poll from Harris Decima shows that if a vote were held this week, 36% would vote for Justin Trudeau's Liberals, 26% are still with Stephen Harper's embattled Conservatives, and 23% would vote for Thomas Mulcair's New Democrats. Now, that 10-point gap is the biggest gap the Liberals have had over the Tories since Trudeau took over as leader. But that level of support, 36%, has been holding steady now for months. Meanwhile, the Tories have been in a slow, steady slide for a year, losing about 1% every now and again, while the New Democrats seem to be stuck in the low 20s. Dan Mader is a former senior Conservative staffer, now at the firm Strategy Corp. He's in Toronto tonight. And Dan, you heard me off the top there. There's been a lot going on if you're a political geek. These by-elections, the Senate scandal. Thomas Mulcair has been pretty good as Perry Mason. But by and large, particularly Democrats and Liberals, they're staying where they are, and the Conservatives continue to leak.
Well, David, I mean, yes, 10 points behind doesn't look so good, but you've got to remember last week the Conservatives came from 30 points behind to win a by-election in Brandon. So there are polls, there will always be polls, but what happens, what matters is what the voters do at the ballot box. And what happened last week was the status quo. The Conservatives held the seats they already held, Liberals held the seats they already held. Nothing changed.
There's no doubt about that. We are 2 years away, of course, from a general election, when voters will have the, quote, only ballot, only poll that matters. But, as you know, in between that time, parties have to go out and recruit candidates. Let's start on that front, because my bet is, seeing how the Liberals did pretty well last week, it's going to be an easier job for Trudeau and the Liberals to go and find good candidates. And that is the first ticket if you're going to run a credible campaign.
It is, but you got to remember that the candidate makes a very small amount of difference on the results of an election. And really they make the most difference if they have local name recognition. We talk all about star candidates. I've been on a lot of campaigns. To me, a star candidate is somebody who the people in that riding have voted for before. And maybe they're city councillor, maybe they're mayor, somebody they're used to voting for. And even then, that might make a few points on the ballot box. Generally in our elections, they're covered like they're presidential races, and people vote for the leader. So sure, the Liberals may be able to get some better candidates, but what makes a difference is who do they want leading the country, who do they want managing the economy.
Well, and of course the Canadians have voted a few times now for Stephen Harper, of course. That is the biggest star candidate that the Conservatives have for sure. Let me ask you though, do you think that his brand has been tarnished a bit as this Wright Duffy affair has been drip by drip by drip over the last several months?
I think that it's definitely a challenging time for the Conservatives, and how could it not be? If you've been watching the news for the last 6 months, all you've heard about is this, this talk of who paid back Duffy's expenses. You got to remember, that's what this is about. It's not about who took money, it's about who paid back the money that Duffy owed to taxpayers. But that's all they've heard about. And the feds are out doing a lot of things. They're trying to fix the way we train the labor force. They're working on a lot of other issues. They're working on the economy. But all anyone's heard about is Nigel Wright and Mike Duffy. So, of course, in that environment, it doesn't surprise me the polls don't look so good.
Let me ask you then about Thomas Mulcair and the NDP. I mean, you probably got friends who are New Democrats, I do as well, and they have seemed frustrated over the last month that A, all the media seems to do is talk about Justin Trudeau, and B, their guys having a pretty good time in the House of Commons, but it ain't showing up in terms of potentially attracting more support for the party.
It's got to be very frustrating. I think that it really is a great example of the type of polling you get between elections. Mulcair is out there, he's doing great work in the House of Commons, being the great leader that you would want in question period. He's coming out with policies. On the other hand, you've got Justin Trudeau, who doesn't really have any policies, doesn't really stand for much, but is kind of this shiny new thing. And that's what people are saying, oh yeah, Justin Trudeau, yeah, we'd vote for him if there was an election. It's your very typical between election polls when people don't actually have to make that decision that, this new thing that looks good on TV is what they say they're going to vote for.
Thinking then, looking forward for Conservatives as they sort of probably want to rebuild a little bit of popularity and shore up some strength. We know there's going to be new ridings, which probably works to the Conservative advantage. But is it more the same, which is not such a bad thing, and there's more steady stewardship, or would the leadership of the party be wise to look for some big idea other than, taking on the company's telcos?
Well, I mean, look, the Stephen Harper brand is about steady leadership of the economy. It's about steady incremental progress. It's not about big, grand schemes, grand plans. I mean, that is the Liberal way of doing things. Stephen Harper is elected because the people of Canada were tired of that. So I think you can expect more of that. In terms of the new ridings, it's not necessarily the new ridings favor the Conservatives. It's that the new ridings are reflecting the fact that our population has shifted to areas, suburbs, exurbs, and the people who live in those areas tend to be more conservative. So that'll definitely be good. I think what you see over the next couple of years is Conservatives building towards a balanced budget, being able to balance the budget before the next election, being able to go into the election delivering some key tax cuts they promised in the last election, and then daring Justin Trudeau. Are you going to run on some big, bold spending plans? Because if so, you're going to have to run on a tax hike. And are you willing to do that? And that's the battle that Stephen Harper wants to set up.
Dan Mader in Toronto tonight. Thank you so much, Dan. Appreciate it.
Thank you, David.